Hi, everybody. We'll begin in just a minute. So I'd like to welcome everyone and welcome back those who attended the last couple of weeks and to those who took part in any of our 2021 webinars. It's great to have you with us today. Food security is the theme of the discussion. And before I introduce our great guests, I'll introduce myself. My name is Pete Smith. I am your host, and I'm also the Executive and Creative Director for the Canadian Centre for Rural Creativity. It remains an honor and a real privilege to be here. Today, I am speaking to you from the city of Toronto, and I want to acknowledge that I am on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and further acknowledge that Toronto is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We invite you to share the lands that you live, work, and play on and are participating from today in the chat section, if you like. We want to thank the recovery cohort and others who are supporting the creation of these sessions. They include the BC Association of Emergency Managers and BC Hydro, and I would be remiss if I didn't offer a special shout out to Deb Borzos, a force of nature and the #1 producer of this important web series. Any resources or information or comments you have to share can be added to the chat section throughout today's session. There will be a list made and shared of links as well as presenters' contact information at the end of the series. Now, if you want to connect to a presenter to find out information shared from a particular session before then, please be in touch via the following link: communitydisasterrecovery@gmail.com. Alexka, our IT producer, is going to post that in the chat, along with links for the British Columbia Association for Emergency Managers and for the Canadian Centre for Rural Creativity. Thank you, Alexka. The sessions are being recorded, as you just heard, and we will keep them on the BC Association of Emergency website. Now, it usually takes about a week or so to get them loaded to the site, so please be patient with us. During the presentations, please leave your video and audio turned off, as for some attending, it can offer challenges with instability of connection. We have an hour or so, so I want to get right at it. I'll introduce each guest and we'll turn things over to them one at a time. They each have approximately 15 minutes, and we'll save the Q&A until after the third presentation, time permitting. I'll also keep an eye on the chat for your questions, observations, and reflections as the presenters offer their insights, and we'll get to as many of those as we are able following the presentations. So it gives me I know it's a great honor to introduce our first guest. His name is Dr. Harry Penn. He is jointly responsible for the operation and management of the Kluane Lake Research Station, KLRS, in southwestern Yukon. Dr. Penn is implementing a program to bring sustainable energy and agricultural infrastructure and technologies to KLRS, and part of a broad initiatives to increase sustainability through ANA. The aim is to develop a demonstration platform for providing an experimental facility that can be used as a test bed prior to major investment in new technologies, while at the same time modernizing the research station facilities and lowering our environmental footprint. Harry, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm just going to share my screen here and we'll get started. Can everyone see that okay? We good? Yes, okay, perfect. So today I'm going to present briefly our project that we have underway now at the Kluane Lake Research Station, which is in southwest Yukon, about 220 kilometers northwest of Whitehorse in Yukon. We are on the traditional territories of the White River, Kluane, and Champagne-Ajax First Nations, and we work closely with all of those First Nations and with our local communities as well as part of this project. The project is to, as the introduction said, to look at a hydroponic system as sort of a proxy for these types of systems. Typically, they're found and have been installed in urban settings. We've installed one off-grid and in a northern setting, and we are trying to understand, sort of the operational feasibility parameters and protocols for operating them in a more northern, remote, and rural setting. So what we have is a 40-foot shipping container. that houses just over 2,800 growing spaces in a hydroponic growing setup. The whole system is ran using LED lights, and it's ran off-grid at the Kearney Lake Research Station. The unit came to us from a company in the US called Cropbox, which is a subsidiary of Williamson Greenhouses. But there are a number of other companies in the US and in Canada that are making very similar systems or using sort of vaguely similar technologies. The way that the plants grow is the individual plants sit in the growing trays, and then they have water piped to them, nutrient-rich water piped to them, and the LED lights supply the grow lights that they need for the plants to grow and photosynthesize. The lights are on for anywhere from 14 to 18 hours a day, depending on exactly how much light each plant needs or each kind of setup a plant needs. The nutrient-rich water flows continuously 24 hours a day, and the system is contained within the shipping container, and we have fans and dehumidifiers to prevent moisture loss and sort of keep the unit quite tight. It's an R20 envelope around the shipping container, and so we don't have to introduce any heat until we get down to sort of -20, -25 degrees Celsius outside, and then we have a little bit of heat from a propane heat exchange that brings that in. So as I mentioned, it's a fairly simple setup for those of you that are familiar with hydroponics. This is kind of the way that it works. So we have a nutrient-rich solution in our holding tanks and our water tanks that's pumped uphill through the growing trays, and then downhill, just steady trickle down, and the plants that sit in their grow media, which is a rock wool, sort of like home insulation type material, just stay saturated with that nutrient-rich water, and the plants grow from there. This is sort of our big question, kind of what can we grow? So far, we've had successes with every type of leafy green, so lettuces, arugula, spinach, bok choys, win-win choys, those type of Asian greens. We've been growing different types of onions, sprouts, and things like that, small microgreens, herbs, basil, oregano, thyme, pretty much any herb we've been able to grow. One thing we're going to start looking at this summer is to sort of expand into vine crops, and also replacing some of the lower trays with a system called Dutch buckets to allow us to grow potatoes and other root crops. Start to experiment with that type of growing system. So the grow cycle lasts about 6 weeks from start to finish. So initially, in the left-hand picture, the seeds are dropped into small growing trays, just in sheets of rock wool. They stay in the seeding area for about 2 weeks, during which time they receive a slightly lower nutrient dose in terms of the water that's coming into them than they will receive in the main trays. The reason we do that is to really encourage root growth and get the plant started. We found that the better the root system before we transplant into the main trays, the healthier the plant after we've harvested, and the longer it lasts in people's fridges and on shelves for distribution. After those 2 weeks, we break apart the rock wool, and the individual plants go into an individual hole in the middle picture, and then they sit there for up to 4 weeks, sometimes 5, depending on if we're experimenting with different crops and we kind of want to see what the next week of growth will bring. But about 4 weeks has been typical for 90 to 95% of our plants. And then after 4 weeks, we harvest the entire crop, clean the system, and basically start again. So within our system, we have just over 2,800 plant spaces, and so we're harvesting around 700 plants a week, 5 to 10% losses for things just don't quite grow as well as we'd hoped. So that represents about 30 kilos of fresh produce a week that we can disseminate into our local communities. So where is our produce going? We distribute north and south up the Alaska Highway from the Kearney Lake Research Station. We go to 2 different communities. We go into grocery stores, other community stores. We go to government buildings, and then we hold a farmer's market where community members can come along, bring their own bag, and select exactly what plants they want, whether they want 2 head of lettuce, 3 herbs, and so on. And then we have a set price on the gram. We weigh everything, and then people can take away exactly what they wanted. We had found that a lot of systems like this do sort of a mix bag, but we had some great experiences with that. People not wanting everything that we were giving them, people wanting very specific things based on their needs, size of household, so on. So we found the farmers market has been the most equitable way of doing things. So as I mentioned, our system is completely off grid. We take our water from a well. We don't have a pipe going straight to it. We wanted to avoid that from a winter operation perspective. The system does run year round. And so what we do is we just drag a simple garden hose, fill up a main holding tank, which then distributes the water into the reservoirs where the plants are growing. We have to do this about every 10 to 14 days. So it's pretty low maintenance. It's pretty easy to do even at sort of negative 30, negative 40 temperatures that we can get sometimes up here in the Yukon winter. The power for the system is ran off our solar system and renewable energy system that we have at the Killarney Lake Research Station. We've got a 48 kilowatt DC solar array, a battery storage system, and a generator for backup. So that system will run the container year round, as well as running the research station year round. Interestingly, what that would enable us to do is actually have one of these systems that is mobile, that is transportable. And so one of the ideas that we've been kind of playing around with is whether or not you have one of these containerized systems on a fairly mobile trailer system, because as long as you can have a water input and as long as there's a power source, whether it be a plug into a mains power, plug into a generator, plug into a renewable energy system, you could park up one of these systems, grow, and then in an emergency situation, in a situation where you either need to evacuate or rapidly bring in food, you could transport these systems around. And once they're drained, they're just like moving a shipping container. You can get 40-foot shipping containers. You can also get these containers at 20 foot, at 10 foot, at more modular systems, and kind of cluster them together. So that's, I think, one thing that particularly for these remote settings or in this context, an emergency management setting, would be a really interesting thing to look into. So that's my 15 minutes or so. I unfortunately have to drop off the call as we go through the afternoon, excuse me, but all my contact information is here. I'm happy for people to reach out if they're interested in the project or anything else we've got going on, have any questions, email, phone, however you'd like to get hold of me, please do. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Penn. That was awesome. I had a couple of quick questions for you. One is because I know you're splitting. Can the containers be insulated so that you don't need any propane? Is that possible to get to that point? And then, is this a project for scaling up? I mean, already you described that a little bit, but I'm thinking about communities all over the world given climate change. So just, I don't know if you got any time to be able to.
No, totally. I've got time to answer those questions. Absolutely. So the interesting thing about these systems is the way to think about kind of the heating, cooling part is just assume that every kilowatt of energy that is brought into the system or consumed by the system is converted into heat. So once you've got the basic pumps going, once you've got the lights going, you're running at about 8 to 10 kilowatts of energy consumed. So essentially energy converted into heat. And so we spend 8, 9, 10 months of the year cooling than we do actually heating. And so that's really more of where the challenges come. And then the other thing is, if you're cooling and it's super cold outside, you have to have a system of either economizing, so you sort of mix the interior air with the exterior air before it enters the interior, or you need to warm it up a little bit because otherwise you end up sort of freezing and shocking the plants. So it's more of a heating in terms of like balancing the heat load and the general temperature through the container, rather than heating because we don't have enough insulation. And that heating cooling piece is quite tricky. Of course, if you're cooling, you have to manage moisture extraction as well, which we've got some systems in place to do that. But if it's very cold outside again and you're introducing moisture, then that's kind of how you can get freeze up. So that's quite a complicated little balance. And so you sort of have to, it's just a balance basically.
Right. There's just a question from Deb. Where do you get the nutrients that are going in via the water system?
Sure. So all the nutrients are water soluble. So we actually get them from a company in Alberta. We have a vehicle that comes from the University of Calgary up to the research station once a year. So we just piggyback on that so that we're not increasing our general shipping and things like that to the Yukon. But it's just a 5-gallon pail of water soluble organic nutrients, and we just add so much of part A and so much of part B, and that's it. It's just sort of your basic NPK. It's got a little bit of extra stuff in there as well. The one question I didn't address on scalability, these systems are really easy to scale. So once you've got one and you have one person operating them, to have two or to have three doesn't require the exact same amounts of effort again for each container. There's some systems that can really be sort of modulated and done at the same time. Interestingly, I think these systems probably do work better in 2s and 3s because you can start to share the resources that you're bringing up to them, share the workload, and you can also optimize your growing. So for example, if you really wanted to focus on one type of plants or one type of crop, then you could optimize one system specifically for that and have one more of a more varied system. In our container, we're growing, you know, oregano at one end and kale at the other. These plants don't exactly sing in the same choir. So having to kind of balance the system to do that is also quite tricky. So scalability is totally an option.
Oh, that's great. Well, you got me singing in your choir. I remember spending $10 on a cabbage when I was up on Baffin Island, and something like this in a place like that, fresh produce, having it available. Well, it's a game changer. It's
Totally.
awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
So
one last
yes,
piece I'll mention is that we've got some experiments on the way is to actually do the lab analysis of the phytonutrient in lettuce leaves that we're growing compared to what a supermarket is growing, and the hypothesis is, and some of the early evidence is already suggesting that just because we don't have that transportation, we don't have those food miles, then there is a higher nutrient quality and sort of concentration in them. So that's sort of an extra added piece that we're going to get to. We're at the end of year one of a multi-year project, so we're just
well,
getting
it's encouraging and exciting and innovative, and I thank you again from on behalf of all of us here. And if folks have questions, maybe what I'll do, Harry, is I'll collect them and I'll ship them up to you via email or something like that. We'll make sure
yeah.
that I'm sure there's a lot of questions that people have, but we know you have to bounce now. But thanks so much, and hope to see you again.
Thank you ever so much. Thanks everyone. Cheers. Bye bye.
Okay, well, that was great. Maybe hungry. So our next guest, great honor to introduce Cheryl Rogers to you. And in way of introduction, Cheryl has been involved with disaster response for animals since 1999 and is a founding member of CDART, the Canadian Disaster Animal Response Team. As a CDART trainer, she has traveled across BC, Alberta, and Manitoba to present workshops on establishing community animal disaster response teams. She has broad experience in animal disaster response, including oiled bird rescue, Firestorm 2003 in BC, Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Fraser River freshet in 99 and 2007, the BC wildfires in 17-18 and 2021, and the atmospheric river events in 2021. She is the CDART liaison with EMBC for provincial disaster response. Cheryl is also a chartered professional accountant, and it's a great pleasure to have her here. Cheryl, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Peter. All right, I do not have a PowerPoint, so I'll just get that out of the way. You just all have to look at my face. Sorry about that. Just to start, I would like to acknowledge that I am here today coming to you from the traditional unceded lands of the Stalo First Nation here in the city of Mission, and I would like to thank them to allow me to live and play in this area. So just what we're going to go through is a brief background of CDART, then sort of what is needed in terms of food for food security, when it's needed, where it's needed, where and how to source the food, and how to get the food there. These are all issues that we've sort of encountered in past years, and then of course just in what's been happening just in 2021. So CDART began in 2003 after Firestorm 2003. We are 100% volunteer. We are trained in disaster response. We respond for all animals under all 4 pillars of emergency management. So today we're talking about food security, which is primarily a recovery issue. However, I do want to note that there are some species of animals that do very poorly if they don't get fed, like they have to be regularly fed. So food security could in fact be a response issue for certain types of animals if there's no food available to them. So as to what is needed, in a situation with animals, you'll have pets, so there'll be pet food. that's needed. So there may be dry food, it may be canned food. There's also for livestock, you may have hay, you may have feed. There's a number of exotic type of pets that people have. So it may have a sort of a unique need. Some animals need fresh vegetables and fruits in order to stay healthy. Some animals need other animals to stay healthy, thinking primarily of reptiles and other exotic kind of animals. So there's a broad range of food that may be required in a community in order to provide food security for the animals. The other thing that's very important is to have a source of water for them. Just like us, animals need to have drinkable water, potable water. It can't be full of debris, bacteria, etc. And depending on the situation, there could be shortages of that. And animals, depending on the size and depending on their needs, can go through quite a bit of water. So that's a big piece of it. And then also, in order to feed the animals, you need a method to feed them. So for pets, primarily you're going to have bowls that we're all used to. A horse may be used to eating out of a hay net, or it may be used to eating off the ground. If it's a flood situation, or depending on what the ground is like, is it contaminated, is it wet, etc., you may have to figure out alternate forms to deliver the food to the animals in order for them to stay healthy. So you're not going to put hay on the wet ground, because then you'll have wet hay, and sooner or later, and it won't last very long that way. So storage is actually a very big piece of food security for animals, especially for livestock. If they've lost their barns or other storage sheds, where can the food be stored once you get it? Has to be safe from the elements, has to be safe from other animals. So that is a big concern. And with the various groups that are available during recovery to help with rebuilding homes, cleaning homes, etc., there's nothing there available for animals specific. Although some of the groups, to be fair, will of course look to that, but that's just another consideration when you're looking at food security for animals. So the other thing is when it's needed. Well, it's needed when there isn't any and animals are hungry. It's an ongoing concern sometimes. Again, with pet food, you can usually rely on donors. People love to give pet food, although in that case, you have to be careful what kind of food is coming. Is it a good food? Is it a poor food? How are you going to manage that? Some animals need special diets, so you may have to access through a veterinarian or alternative source. With the livestock issue, if it's a large disaster, they may have lost their entire hay order. So if someone orders their hay and then a wildfire comes through or a flood comes through or what have you, their entire hay order that they ordered, that they had delivered, is now useless to them. So sourcing the hay can be very problematic, especially like this past year in BC, there was a lot of drought conditions, so there wasn't a lot of hay. So hay actually had to be sourced from out of province. So it's always good to source as close as possible to home, but you may not be able to depending on the situation. So where is it needed? People that own animals will need it. Possibly city animal shelters will need it. There may be rescues or animal welfare agencies that will need it. And there may be, this is interesting, a lot of times farms have cats to keep down their rodent populations, barn cats, and they're not often considered pets. But depending on the situation and what disaster has affected the community, there may not be a big rodent problem, or there may be a bigger rodent problem. But so that's another thing to think about. If people have barn cats, do they need actual food, or are they going to be able to feed themselves as they have been? So where and how to source it. So obviously pet stores, pet food distributors, pet food manufacturers, they're actually very good at donating. And as I said, individuals as well, groups like CDART, and there's a number of groups, especially when there's a wildfire or a flood or something, they mobilize to actually get truckloads of food. So getting it is not usually a problem, the pet food. Hay and feed can be a little bit more problematic. Hay, especially, as I've already explained. A good place to try and source, to get assistance sourcing hay and feed and that type of the more agricultural food is from actual associations like the BC Cattlemen's or poultry growers, that type of thing. Also see if you can have some assistance through the Ministry of Agriculture, because they are working with the agribusinesses. So they're working with the actual registered farms, and they may be sourcing it, and you may be able to get in on that source of food. So in BC, you have farm animals, which are from registered farms. They've got a government number, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have non-farm farm animals, which are all other livestock that aren't on registered farms. So primarily the food security issue in a community likely would be the non-farm farm animals. So there would be no government supports in place because those animals fall through the cracks. They're not pets, they're not farm animals, so they fall through the cracks. And so the producer associations can be a good source for you to try and get those supplies. The other thing that's a major problem is getting the food there. And even if the roads are open for a while, they might close again. So you've got well-meaning individuals that can bring it in. You may have people within the community that can go out and get massive shipments and bring it in. Trucking companies are quite helpful. During the atmospheric rivers, we use BC Wildfire Service helicopters. There was a number of small plane pilots that were also donating their time in their planes. And the last shipment we sent up was, they were already short of food because of the wildfires, and then they were cut off because of the atmospheric rivers. And then because of the weather, there was no way to fly anything in. So we actually got help from the trains, and we actually used a truck train to truck it in. So there's various ways of transporting the food up to where it needs to get to. It's just a matter of ascertaining what's the best way to do it and working with the various partner agencies to get that done. Oh, I forgot to say, there is also a truckers group that's on Facebook that will help with animal transport items. And a lot of the rescues that do the animal supplies, food, etc., will provide their own transport and sometimes even their own people to load and unload. Which brings me to the final thing. When you get your shipment of food there, however it gets there, is there anybody to unload it? Yes, Tarina, that's right. Western Animal Transfer Network. There's a lot of them. So sometimes they won't be able to provide people to load and unload. So they'll load it at this end with a set of volunteers, but those volunteers will not be available at the other end. So can the community or whoever needs the supplies, are they available to unload it? So this is just a basic overview of what you might want to look at. Everybody's situation is going to be specific. Their communities are going to have different needs. If you have any questions, concerns, you can contact CDART. You can put my contact information in the chat. If anything else, we do have a website, cdart.org, and if you do the contact button there, it'll go to an info address, and usually that comes to me anyways. That's easy to remember. So the important thing to remember is when you're looking at your food security needs, don't forget the animals, because the people in your community will care. And that is my short and sweet presentation today, which is totally unlike me.
It was great. Thanks so much, Cheryl. I'm sure there are questions, so if you don't mind sticking around,
I'll be here till the end. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, but that was a wonderful presentation, and You know, I thought about the wildlife out there, and I think there's so many different angles to this story. But wow, that's fantastic, and I'm glad you're on the case, and many others are on the case too. So thank you very much. We'll circle back after Wiley presents. But
Thanks, Peter.
thank you. So our final presenter today, the wonderful Wiley Bystedt. And as way of introduction, Wiley has a Bachelor in Communications from Royal Roads University, Diploma in Local Government Community Economic Development from Dalhousie University, and an MBA in Community Economic Development candidate from Cape Breton University. Wiley works as a specialist in disaster recovery, contracting as a Community Recovery Manager, Advanced Planning Unit, or EOC Agricultural Support for municipalities and First Nations around the province. She also provides additional business and community economic development services to nonprofit organizations, private businesses, and municipalities. Wiley volunteers on a number of local and provincial agricultural associations. In almost 20 years with farmers markets in British Columbia, Wiley has spent time volunteering and working in many different roles. With her ranch, Coyote Acres Ranch, located in Alexandria, BC, Wiley is a market vendor and director in Quesnel and Macleys Lake, while also helping to start new markets and work with new vendors across the province. As president of the British Columbia Association of Farmers Markets, she worked diligently to increase the profile of farmers markets in the province while strengthening market initiatives such as the Nutrition Coupon Program and rolling out new initiatives such as the Farmers Market Trail. Now, as past president and currently a director, Wiley continues to work with the BCAFM on areas of accessibility and sustainability, including vendor membership, emergency preparedness, and business incubation. It is great to have you here, Wiley, and I'll turn the wheel over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I am going to attempt to share my screen. Alexa, why am I having problems? Of course. Hang on.
I made you co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
There we go. Thank you. Let's do that. Yeah, okay. Sweet. Okay. And I just want to, yeah, okay, perfect, thanks. Thank you, Peter, so much for the introduction. This has been a great session today, and I've been learning a lot, so I really appreciate everything. I'd also like to recognize that I am able to live, work, and play and enjoy my life on the traditional territory of the Estala people. I'm looking out my window at a beautiful sunny day, so this is it's a good time up here. I'm going to, there we go. Okay, I'm going to start by taking you quickly through some general information about the BC Association for Farmers Markets. From now on, I'll use the acronym of BCAFM. And then I'm going to zone in on one of the provincial programs in particular. So I'm hoping that you've heard of our value of 100% BC grow, make, bake, raise, and wild harvest. It is our key market difference maker, and it is what drives all of our other activities. So a little about who we are and where our members are. So we have, last year, anyway, we had 134, cats, 134 market members around the province. These were organized by 103 local community organizations in 10 regions of the province. The markets go anywhere from, small, medium, and large size. They're urban and rural, anywhere from 6 vendors to over 200 vendors. In total, we have 48, or actually now in excess of 4,800 vendors through the province. And so we are a key direct sales channel for BC farmers, BC small scale food processors, BC craft beer, wine and spirits, and BC artisans and crafters. So BCFM prioritizes a triple bottom line. We approach the economic, environment, and social sustainability goals. We generate in excess of 185 million in annual economic benefits, and we are good for adjacent businesses within individual communities. We also generate substantial social impacts. We're a community connector. We are a tourism and agritourism hub. We promote food security and local community programming, which leads to the program that I'll be talking about directly today. Otherwise known as the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program, which is a mouthful. So in general, we call it the FMNCP. BCFM started this program in 2007 as a pilot program and finally started to receive funding for the program in 2012. Primary funding is received from the Ministry of Health, while markets, communities, and regions frequently provide additional funding for their individual market circumstances. So if you're in the Sunshine Coast, your farmers market or community could be doing a fundraiser, and those funds will stay in those communities. Same thing for the Columbia Basin Trust, their contributions specifically for markets in their region. So as you can see, this program provides significant provincial impact, providing coupons for fresh food. Fresh food for this program is defined as vegetables, fruit, nuts, eggs, dairy, herbs, meat, and fish. So let's take a look at who those 19,000 individuals are. The program is in 86 communities. Of the 134 markets in the province, 103 of them participate in this program with 171 community partners. So a program requirement is that markets and community partners or community agencies partner together. The community partner is responsible for registering individuals into the program and distributing the coupons. The market vendors redeem the coupons and then get paid by the market, which is reimbursed by the program. I find it noteworthy that among the 19,000 individuals, 6,600 were children, 2,000 were seniors and adults. So this is a program that makes a significant local impact into food security. I would also note that the redemption rate in 2021 was 85%, and this is actually probably the lowest in 10 years it's ever been. Normally we hover about the 95–96% redemption rate. So we're putting that down to COVID. Yeah. So this is a great program, but given all this activity and particularly the impact to the households, it's important that when disasters strike, that we're still able to maintain the program with the size and the reach of 86 communities. Pivoting this program quickly becomes critical. And it's possible because each market is individually operated and they're able to make decisions that best suit their community. Farmers markets are listed as an essential service by the PHO, and we work diligently to maintain that relationship. I've also been able to work with municipalities towards resolutions for UBCM, and in 2021, we had a UBCM resolution that was passed in which farmers markets are designated as essential services during emergencies in BC. So the first step in what I'm hoping is more work to be done. So we're going to take a look at a couple different communities and see how they've used the FMNCP program to pivot during disasters. The work we're doing now in pivoting the program started in 2017 when my local markets in Quesnel and Macleese Lake were affected by fires that year. What we found in my area is that typically farmers and ranchers don't leave if they have livestock. We stay to look after. So although the city of Quesnel was spared that year, the farmers and ranchers in outlying areas were not, which meant for many, they were unable to make it to the market which obviously affected the availability of local food, not only for the program participants, but for the communities in general. So although there were many examples of communities and members working together, one example was that we were able to organize pickups where market members could meet the farmers at the police barricades. In 2017, we had barricades between areas. The farmer would literally pass the veggies over the barricade. They would be driven to market, sold on the farmer's behalf. Then the money, of course, returned to the farmer. And the food was then available to the community and the program. We actually also used this system for other items that you couldn't get at the market. So prescription medication and other items. It turned into quite an interesting volunteer exercise in making sure that people were traveling safely through the different travel areas. But from that time, we started paying attention when markets and farmers had impacts from natural disasters. In 2019 and 2020, we had flooding around the province. Many farmers had to plant 2 or 3 times to get a crop. And there was flooding happening at harvest. And so some farmers were literally harvesting by boat to get their product to market. So all of this then makes it interesting in addition to just being able to be a farmer, but being able to maintain a local food access for markets and making sure that the local customers know that farmers still will be there with local fresh food. So making sure that there's still support there. In Lytton in 2021, and of course everyone is aware of that situation, but we have farmers markets and community partners in Lytton, and we were concerned. We reached out to our Lytton partners the week of the fire, and it took 3 weeks before they responded to us and were really able to start looking at reorganizing and what did that look like. It was a good lesson to remember that people in disasters need time to cope with their individual circumstances. People process at different times, and just because recovery, from my perspective, is a good thing, we have to remember to make sure that people are there. Ultimately, we ended up redistributing coupons in a couple different ways in the Lytton situation, and actually further to that, when the flooding then happened in the fall in Merritt and in other areas, we were able to use the same processes that had been set up. But community partners that had relocated to Kamloops and were continuing to engage with the same people in the new location were able to continue distributing coupons. And these families were able then to shop at the Kamloops farmers markets or other markets in the region. And that's the great thing about the coupons, is that they're not designated to a specific market, even though a market and a community agency have to partner within a community. If somebody is traveling, or in cases of disasters, those coupons can be used throughout the province. There was one farmer in Lytton area that lost their buildings, but not their fields. And so they were still able to finish harvesting their products. And there were community members that were still in that surrounding area. And if you remember, there was kind of a travel zone. So as long as you stayed in sort of that travel zone, community members were able to travel around. So we were able to work with the community members that were still there. And we purchased all of the harvest from that particular farmer using the coupon program. And then the food was then distributed to families within the travel zone. This was obviously a fairly significant financial benefit to the farmer. It meant that they were able to stay financially viable. And it meant that the community had easy access to local food, and which obviously in that time was needed. But yes, 2021 wasn't done with us. We had a heat dome. And we found that during the heat dome, particularly in the Fraser Valley, we had community partners reaching out to the markets, working together to reorganize for pickups and deliveries so that both community members and program participants weren't having to make the travels down into the market. They were able to stay safe, and it allowed an opportunity for the program, for the community partners to be able to check on the participants and make sure that everyone was okay. COVID resulted in a number of changes to markets, physical layouts, physical distancing, PPE gear, barriers around vendor stalls, new ways to shop in person, online. Provincially in 2020, over 60 markets went online in the 60 to 90 days leading up to the summer season, something that had never occurred here before. So in addition to online, markets made further changes to enhance the safety and ensure local communities maintained access to local fresh food. So in Salt Spring Island, the volunteers worked together so community members could place an order online or via phone, and the volunteers would fill the order and then deliver the order. So it was minimizing that, the looking after that distancing. In Sicamous, they did something similar, but they had food bags that were pre-assembled for all shoppers. And then they set up basically a drive-through window where customers could come by and pick up this the food bag that had been assembled for them. A lot of general changes happened, focusing sort of on three main challenges: financial viability for markets, the trade-offs for environmental sustainability, and then communication and safety. So many markets changed their hours. They put in early shopping hours for seniors and families. They allowed coupon participants to pick up products at farm gate, thus eliminating the need to come down into the market if they weren't comfortable with that. And again, the online shopping, deliveries, and order systems, everything that you think of sort of as that market experience was looked at by markets to ensure that communities and coupon participants could access the food that they needed. So I have a video that I'm going to try and use. It's it's a brief video from 2016. So I'm at the Kelowna Farmers Market participating. I'm actually emceeing an announcement of a funding increase for the program. And these are my closing statements. And I thought it was relevant because while many things have changed since then, the video makes reference to in 2016, there was 787 farmers participating in the program provincially, whereas now there's over 1,100. How much ranching I do has changed. I still have that shirt. But my apologies for the background noise, but I think my comments on community are still valid. So I'm going to share my sound. Yeah, I like it. She likes it up here. Thank you, Hazelyn. It's so great to hear directly how the Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program is making a difference. The coupon program is helping people become healthier, but it also supports local economies, providing farmers with income and keeping money in the community. It's simply a great program with far-reaching benefits. And while I am here as president of the BC Association of Farmers Markets, I have a day job, and my day job is ranching. So my family and I pour our heart and soul into what we do, and we're passionate about feeding people local and sustainable food. And because this program is also in my amazing community of Quesnel, where I sell my 5 food groups, beef, pork, lamb, chicken, and llama, I personally talk to the participants of the program, both the families and the farmers, and I can see the difference it is making to the health and welfare of everyone involved. I see firsthand how this program has changed our market, making it an important piece in improving the health of families and seniors in Quesnel. The simple and powerful exchange is happening in markets and communities between thousands of lower-income families and seniors and over 700 small-scale BC farmers and ranchers. So we should be proud that BC is the only province in Canada with a program of this kind. So once again, the BC Association of Farmers Markets thanks you, Minister Letnick, for the province's vision, leadership, and commitment to families and family farms. Let's all continue to buy local, farm fresh foods, support healthy families, and a healthy farming sector in BC. Okay, so I'm just gonna, there we go. I'm gonna finish it there. So just a final thought. Last year, the BC Association of Farmers Markets initiated a federal petition to ask the federal government to create matching funds for provincial farmers market coupon programs. The petition was picked up by Gord Johns, the MP for Courtenay Alberni, and you can hear him present it to the House at a Google link that Alexa's put up. If successful, the initiative would double our current funding with contributions from the federal government, matching the provincial contribution while encouraging other provinces who don't have a farmers market coupon program, because we are still the only one, to start one in order to access the matching funding. So imagine the impact it could have if everyone in Canada could access a program like ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wiley. That was absolutely awesome. I didn't know about this program. I'm going to look into it much more. And today, just listening to what Harry's doing up in the Yukon with regards to food is innovative. What you're doing and what this program is innovative. And certainly, Cheryl, what you're talking about is an important reminder for preparedness when we're dealing with the others that we live with in our communities. So I'm totally blown away by all the presentations today. But that was a beautiful way to wrap it up, Wiley. So I thank you so much for that. Now, if folks have questions, you can pop them into the chat. And I know, Cheryl, if we could maybe have both you and Wiley available on the screen if you want to make yourself seen and known. There we are. Thank you, Cheryl. So maybe to get things started, there are a couple of questions, and maybe Cheryl, I'll start with you. What other recovery issues might be faced regarding animals and their care?
In the past, one of the major recovery issues for animals is replacing their shelter. I alluded to that during the food piece, because a lot of times the food is stored in the same building or an ancillary building. Barns are often the need, and one of the biggest needs is fencing. So if you've got, especially if you've got livestock, if you don't have your fences up, you can't let your livestock out. Whether or not the ground has been contaminated, is it safe for them to even eat? If they are ungulates, can they eat off the grass, or is the grass going to be actually causing them health issues, those types of things? And again, there's nothing really covered for that. And one of the other issues can be if there has been mortality, if there's been loss of life. And again, especially with larger animals or multiple animals, so if it's a number of chickens or what have you, how are those remains disposed of in a respectful manner that takes into account people's feelings, but also in an efficient manner so that recovery can continue? So those are just some of the other items that people might have to think about.
Great, thank you. Wiley, I'm going to put two questions together for you. How is the program supported by the government, and then how can I support this program in my local community? A couple of questions, an A and a B there.
Okay. So the program is a partnership between us and the Ministry of Health, and basically through the healthy eating initiatives, the BC government, helps to manage, focusing on 4 key areas, right? So healthy eating, healthy lifestyle, resources, and healthy communities. So they support this program along with the Population and Public Health Program at the BC Centre for Disease Control, and the Provincial Health Services Authority. So it's got a few we've got a few fingers in there, but by and large, the Ministry of Health provides the bulk of the funding because they see this as very much a healthy eating initiative. And as I mentioned, you know, local support has been huge for this as well. There's so many communities and markets who've been putting together fundraisers. The participants receive $21 a week for 16 weeks. So that's, I don't have a calculator, but it's about $330 for the year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but quite frankly, $21 a week in fresh food for you know, for these impacted participants is really huge. And so locally, if you go onto our website, there is a donation link. So people can donate directly to the program, and then you can put in which community you want your money to go to. And then it will go towards supporting more families in those specific communities. So that's a great way for individuals to participate in the program, and they'll get a charitable tax receipt.
Nice. That's great. There is a question here that goes, does the BCAFM have extra infrastructure to loan to communities such as if their farmers market structures are destroyed in a disaster?
No. However, we work with a couple different ministries. So we work with the Ministry of Agriculture on providing some extra. So in fact, just this year, we rolled out for the first time a new program where markets were able to fill out an application for grants to provide some extra infrastructure, so to have more resources available for their members. So that's the first time that that's ever happened. So we're looking at making more of that. We're working on a project in terms of what does a mobile market look like. So there's stuff in the works, but no, we don't have a lot of funds, unfortunately, for just extras.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And of course, from the CPA, we have that Cheryl would be $21 per week for 16 weeks is $336. And there's an HST on that. I don't know. Anyway, yes, that's good. So value add, Cheryl, today. You brought both your hats.
It was a math problem. I couldn't let it lie.
No,
I had to deal with
please.
it.
Please, you've saved my life. That was great. Well, we're just about to the end of our hour. It's just zipped right along. I on behalf of all that produced this and are involved in this project, thank you both very much. And Harry, if you can hear me from wherever you are in the Yukon, thank you as well. So just an awesome series of presentations there. Lots to think about, lots to learn. I encourage folks to check out the links that Alexka has put into the chat there, get in touch with people, learn more about what's going on. Now, we have our next webinars coming up on March 2nd, noon to 1 p.m. Pacific, and the topic is debris management. We're going to have a presenter from BC speaking about the practice of sifting and archaeological perspectives as an important feature of the debris management process. And we'll also be joined by an experienced emergency management professional from Australia who will share information and examples of various events involving debris removal there. Having been to one of the webinars in the first go-around, there was someone from Australia and someone from New Zealand. There's just some great insights that are shared from other communities in different parts of the world, which is I find it's always useful, but close to home is key. Another great session. I want to thank Deb and Alexka for all that they do in this whole thing. Deb Borzos, really unbelievable. I don't know, the Order of British Columbia to you. So we're going to sign off with this. Stay safe, keep warm wherever you are, and look forward to seeing you on March the 2nd. Take care, everybody.